Welcome to another video, and today this is the 23rd of December, and I will be talking about just some general frontline updates today. Again, in the past few weeks, we haven't seen that many changes on the front line, so I'm thinking maybe I should do more videos talking about the rear, maybe the political situation, or maybe just like future operations that could be going on, because really, I feel like I'm repeating myself in a lot of these videos about the frontline updates because it's just the same localized battles in Marinka, Bakhmut, and of course there are some changes over the course of every few days or so, but it's not that significant. And yeah, I do feel like I'm repeating myself a lot, which is why I haven't been uploading a lot. I just haven't had that much new news to be reporting about on the front lines, but I'm going to do my best today to just give everybody some additional information. So let's start out with the situation around Kherson, which I really have not talked about for a while. So in this area, we have just a new airstrike reported. So apparently, this was December 21st. It was reported the Russians launched some airstrikes on the city of Ochakiv. They hit the airstrip. They hit the local naval base, which was having British personnel training the Ukrainian special forces. So in this city, you have the 73rd Naval Center for Special Operations. This has been one of the main units that is responsible for the operations around the Kinburn Spit, and so they have been sending in patrol boats crossing the Dniprovska Gulf, entering the Kinburn Spit, just launching these scouting reconnaissance operations for about a month by now. And so a lot of their training has been occurring in Ochakiv because this is one of the main naval bases that Ukraine has. And you do have British personnel in the city training them as well. And so, yeah, they were hit in this area. I have here 3 polygons to show really the main hubs of Ukrainian military infrastructure in the city. You have the naval base itself, which was hit. You have the special forces base, which is centered around the airstrip and some of the training grounds. And then you have this other port over here, the port of Ochakiv, which is also being utilized. You can see that it is very close to the Kinburn Spit, and so this is where a lot of these reconnaissance operations are being planned, and then from there a lot of them are being operated. So a lot of the attacks, like the ones on Sevastopol, they were organized and launched from Ochakiv. And so I do expect to hear a lot about the city in the future as Ukraine plans to continue probing the Russian line at the Kinburn Spit, which again is still under Russian control. There's no proof that Ukraine has been able to advance since the last time that I talked about the Kinburn Spit, especially given the fact that now all the attention has been moved to Bakhmut. A lot of the Ukrainian units that have been centered around Kherson have been moved to other sectors of fighting. So I don't have that much to say around here. It's really just cross-river shelling at this point, with the Russians targeting a lot of Ukrainian military infrastructure in Kherson, in Berislav, Novokairy, Milove, Dudchany, many of these different towns over here, but nothing significant. Now let's move on to the situation in Marinka, where I do have a bit of an update. But again, really just localized fighting. The Russians are again trying to break through, reach Drewsby Avenue, which, if you don't know by now, is the main dividing line between the eastern and the western parts of the town. And so for many months now, the Russian troops have been trying to break through in this area. They've had some success in the southern part of the town. As I talked about previously, they were able to take over several schools, several warehouses, and residential apartment buildings. You could see that I'm circling them over here. But they've also been bogged down in a lot of the fighting in the central part of the city around the police building and the city council building. And so that's where the clashes are going on right now. You have, of course, the Russian tanks and artillery trying to launch combined assaults onto the fortified Ukrainian positions. And so that's what's really going on in this area. We have a new video that was geolocated to the frozen products factory, showing that the entire area is just completely devastated. But despite the huge amount of ruins a lot of these structures are still standing, and you could still have some very fortified positions in these buildings that are now basically destroyed just from all the shelling and the 9 months of fighting over here. And so we can see that the Russians are storming the frozen products factory. By now they've probably taken it over, and so they do have access to Drewsby Avenue from the north as well. And so you could expect some renewed fighting around this other school in this area, which was previously under Russian control, but the Ukrainians were able to push them back from. Also, in recent days, we've seen a lot of the Ukrainian rear being targeted. I was able to geolocate a video of Ukrainian troops being shelled. It was at this church over here. This is one of the main Ukrainian complexes or hubs on the Marinka rear, where they have a lot of their positions established. And so in recent days, we've seen the Russians hit this area pretty hard, but it is still standing, of course. And again, there are a lot of different positions in these residential streets around the fishing ponds that are being taken up by the Ukrainians. Of course, you have this agricultural enterprise over here, where you have Ukrainian positions, firing positions that are preventing any sort of breakthrough from the north and any sort of flanking maneuvers. And so again, it is really just a slogfest at this point. We'll see if Russia is able to reach Drewsby Avenue before the end of the year, but besides that, there's not much to update on in the sector. Now, let's move on to the situation a bit further up north. The most contested front is, of course, the Bakhmut front, which extends all the way from the city of Toretsk to around Yakovlivka, I'd say right now. And so in this region, we do have some updates. So over the past week or two, the Wagner Group specifically has been trying to cross the Donbass Canal, and so they were successful in one area. I'll show it over here. You can see that they crossed the canal around this ridge over here, and that they did actually establish positions, taking over one bush line, and they did take over one pretty fortified position that was just west of the canal over here. You can see that it's even shown on Google Maps. I think it's an unused reservoir, like it was drained of all of its water, and you could see that there's a trench line over here and also some bush lines. And so the Russians, they were able to take it over for about a week, but the 28th Brigade specifically was mentioned, and they were able to retake the positions after some artillery barrages on the Russian positions to the west of the canal, but also on the rear in Zarianivka over here, this end over here. There's been some pretty heavy Ukrainian strikes on Zarianivka, and we've seen some reported counterattacks in this direction that have been mentioned by Russian sources, that the Ukrainians have been trying to break through in this area. And then we got video confirmation that the Ukrainians had taken control of these trench lines again, and this video is recorded from the 113th Separate Territorial Defense Brigade, and so they're stationed in this area. They're trying to cross over, but it seems like this won't be possible at the moment, as Russians are firmly entrenched in Zarianivka and also across the canal in some areas, although they were pushed back, as I previously stated. So you see how Ukraine is basically using this as their new defensive line. The situation a bit further to the south around Mayorsk is a bit unclear. I'm not sure if the Ukrainians still have positions over here. Remember that the canal isn't that wide and it isn't that deep, so you could have theoretically units crossing over. I don't think that there's actually water at all in the canal at the moment. I think it was drained after all the years of fighting, because it hasn't been in operation since it was, I think, shelled or shut down during the Donbass war, and so it's not actually that difficult to cross over. And so you could have a very fluid situation in this area where it's back and forth fighting in the open areas around these bush lines and hedgerows, but that's not too important. What's more important is the situation in Klishivka, where I haven't had that many updates. I did make a minor change to the map to first indicate that Andriivka is under Russian control. We now have a geolocation of this, and so it's basically confirmed now by every single source, although this has been the case for about 2 weeks now. We know for sure. We also know that if journalists are in Andriivka, that the front line has probably shifted a bit to the west, because it does take a while for the Russian journalists to get into these towns before after they're captured, because obviously there's a safety hazard. If they're directly on the front lines, they could be shelled or fired upon by Ukrainian forces, and so the Russian journalists always wait a few days, which is understandable, which also does mean that the front line has shifted towards Klishivka, which is why I'm now of the belief that the front line looks like this. We also have reports that there's fighting around the train station in Klishivka. This is the train station, if you haven't noticed, this one over here. And so we don't have any conclusive evidence that it's been taken yet, and so I'm not marking it as under Russian control, but I do have the Russian sphere of control in this area slightly expanded based on their recent capture of some open areas and trenches. So now they've actually reached the southern outskirts of the town from the really southwest, you can say, because they are approaching some positions in these agricultural fields. There's a cemetery in this area that could be overrun, and then of course you have the residential areas, and this has been a part of the front line that Ukraine has sort of neglected. And so it's interesting to see the Russians establish positions in these areas where really the Ukrainians hadn't been expecting them, because most of their defensive forces are obviously centered around Opitny and in the eastern part of the city, and now we've sort of seen the Russians attempting to envelop them. So who knows, maybe they will try to probe into the city from the south, or maybe they'll just try to expand further to the west, reaching these forested areas over here. But anyway, let's move on to Opitny, where I have made some minor changes to the map. I now show that the Ukrainians are in control of the school and the gas station, and so they were able to reclaim these several blocks. This is based on just revisions made by pro-Russia maps. And so the Ukrainians are still holding on in this sector. You have the 53rd Brigade, obviously, 54th Brigade, 57th Brigade, all these different units holding on over here in basically every single residential block, every single apartment. And based on geolocated footage, we know that the fighting is in northern Opitny, because we have no videos of Ukrainian troops in the southern part. We only have videos of them just organizing in the northern part. And we can hear shelling, and we can hear small arms fire in the vicinity of this entire area. So we know that the fighting has shifted to the north, and that most of Opitny is under Russian control. There's also the possibility that Opitny could be attacked from the east, because Russia has positions in the eastern part due to their control of Ivanhrad, and so that's another concern for the garrison in Opitny. They might have to withdraw because they really are being enveloped now in all sides. We also have some allegations from the Russian side that they have been able to advance deeper into the Bakhmut district, so that includes taking over the garbage plants, taking over the some of these stores, some of these blocks, some of these residential areas. So I don't actually believe this because I haven't seen it myself, but it does seem like the Russians have been able to advance at least in some open fields. And so I have them marked as in control of this area, but it is very tentative. It is possible that, one, that's not true and that Ukraine controls it, or two, that Ukraine will take it back because they have the ability to launch localized counterattacks in this area in order to gain more favorable positions. Obviously, these are not grand counterattacks that reclaim 2-3 kilometers of land, but they could take over a patch of land that is important in the defense of the city, and I will get more into that in a few minutes. But basically what I'm getting at is that the Russians are continuing to attack the Bakhmut district, and that they have had some minor success. They have been able to clear the first line of blocks over here. You can see I'm going to mark it in a rectangle over here. And so it is very difficult. You have a lot of Ukrainian troops obviously fighting tooth and nail from the 93rd Brigade over here, the 57th Brigade, and some also foreign units, probably from the Foreign Legion, and they were fighting in eastern Bakhmut, and you could hear that they were speaking English from a lot of the videos that are being recorded. And so you do obviously have some foreign troops operating in Bakhmut at the moment. You also have some of the irregular units, Azov Battalion, that are now stationed in this area fighting to hold back the Russians because of how hotly contested the city is in comparison to the rest of the front line. Now, I want to talk about the allegations that Ukraine has been able to conduct a major counterattack in this area. So these are not true. These claims that Ukraine has been able to make these grand counterattacks. I've been looking through many Ukrainian sources, and I would say that the opinions about Bakhmut are mixed. Some of them are just spreading this rumor that Ukraine has been able to take back the entire industrial district, take back all of Pitni without any sort of skepticism. And I've seen others just caution that it isn't confirmed yet. And so what I'm going to show is some of the allegations that I've seen. I've seen some allegations that all of Pitni was retaken. I've seen allegations that the waste sorting plant was retaken, which is entirely possible, especially given the fact that it was taken back by Ukraine previously. I've also seen some claims that the industrial district has been retaken, and there is some footage that I'm going to get into in a second regarding this situation. And of course, also in the northern part of Bakhmut, there were allegations that the Ukrainians were able to push back the Russians. And these are actually true to an extent, because we have now footage of some Ukrainian troops. They might be scouts or just like recon units that were able to advance and take over a local dacha and capture a radio tower. And so we were able to geolocate it to this area, which is pretty close to the gas station where Russia has set up positions. This also does sort of imply that the Ukrainians were successful in holding on to the forested area over here, because we know that there was some very heavy fighting over here between the Russians and the Ukrainians. And it seems like the Ukrainians, at least for now, were able to keep the Russians at bay. And so we're seeing them pushing into these quarries over here to the north of the industrial district. I did see one video which was located in this quarry area. And so this could potentially mean that they're trying to flank the Russian grouping in the industrial district from the north. I don't know how successful that has been, or if that will even come into fruition, but based on the map, it does seem like they were able to take up positions north of the industrial district. We also have evidence from these videos of the Skala intelligence battalion shelling the Wagner group positions in the industrial district from the north. So you can see here there's like videos of them shelling the Sinyats factory plant, which based on this we can confirm that it is under Russian control. A lot of people were very skeptical of the claim that the Russians had taken full control of the industrial district. But if Ukraine is shelling the Sinyat plant, which had been under Ukrainian control, then that does imply that they had lost control of it beforehand. And so we have this evidence that Ukraine is fortified in the forested areas to the north of the industrial district, in that they're just shelling the the Russian positions in this area as well. But I would remind everybody that for every shell that Ukraine expends, the Russians are expending about 10 more. And so when I highlight Ukrainian shelling, that's not to discount the fact that Russia is launching much more artillery shells. Not to say that they're entirely accurate, but given the high quantity, at least some of it is going to inflict damage on the Ukrainian forces, the Ukrainian trenches or defensive lines. And so that's really the situation in Bakhmut. I did make some minor changes. I also marked up this position in the rear of the 54th Mechanized Brigade. You can see that they have a base over here where their, I think, barracks are. So maybe they're sleeping in this area. Maybe they have like their local commanders or like local platoon or squad leaders organizing over here, setting up camp in a certain area. I'm going to try to do that more, where I mark up polygons with very important locations and making sure that everyone could see in depth what the situation is. Now in Soledar, we have the 25th Airborne Brigade. The 3rd Battalion of this brigade was moved into Soledar, probably to hold the line, maybe try to counterattack around Bakhmutske, where I think the situation looks more like this. So I do apologize for not having this entirely correct. It's just that it's going to be impossible for me to edit this polygon because of the way that I made it. And so just know that Ukraine is probably in control of this triangle that I've just drawn over here. Now let's go up a little. The Wagner Group and also the 10th Guards Motor Rifle Division was able to expand their sphere of control around Yakovlivka. So they've cleared some of the Ukrainian bush lines and trench lines around Yakovlivka that were set up a week ago when the town was fully taken. Basically, they're trying to advance onto Vesele first, which is, they're pretty close to Vesele now. There's only like one line of defense separating them from Vesele at this point, and then from there, they have to clear the town, which is possible given how small it is. It's also important to take into account that Vesele is relatively isolated. There's only like one minor road supplying Vesele, and so it could be a potentially dangerous situation for the grouping there. And then after Vesele, there's not really that many towns in the area. You have Vimka, but this is also a very small town. And if the Russians are able to take advantage of this relatively open area, they could flank a lot of the Ukrainian positions around Spirny and Ivanodarivka from an area that was pretty unexpected. They also have the opportunity to expand control in these open fields over here around the main supply line supplying Soledar and Bakhmut, so they can attack like Rozdolivka, Mykolaievka, Krasnopolivka, all of these different towns over here. Although this could be a trap because they're going to advance on these open areas and they'll be surrounded from all sides by Ukrainian troops in sort of like this semicircle cauldron. So we're going to have to see what ends up happening over here, but just know that Russia does have the initiative in this area. Now, we've also seen a lot of reports from Ukrainian side that the Ukrainian troops are trying to counterattack in the area around Bilohorivka, fighting around the forested area. Also, some attempts at counterattacks around Brestove. I don't know how successful they have been. I'd also like to correct the situation in Spirny. Once the video is done, I'm going to change the map over here. Spirny is not under Russian control. This is confirmed by the Wagner group as well. And sure, there was footage of them in one of the residential buildings in Spirny, but since then the Ukrainians have been able to retake their positions. The real front line is more like this, where the Ukrainians have control of the town itself, but the gas compressor plant is still under Russian control. So that's the situation in Spirny. It is just really back and forth, no real breakthroughs. Same thing with Bilohorivka, no real breakthroughs. It is a bit of a gray zone at the moment. Now, I want to talk about the situation in Kremina because it is pretty interesting. So I had previously marked the forested area as a gray zone. Then I gave it to the Russians following some geolocations from this area and the fact that Ukraine had really stopped assaulting Kremina head on. But now it seems like the Ukrainians have made a new effort at least advancing around the forests. I don't know if they want to try to assault Kremina from the south, which is certainly possible if they continue with this momentum, because really they had most of their forces stationed around the Zherebets River, around this town Yampil. That's to withdraw from the forest. But in the past, let's say 2 weeks, they've been slowly but surely ramping up their reconnaissance operations in this forest, entering a lot of the different these different encampments along the Donets River over here. And we did finally get a photo that was geolocated to this area over here, sort of like this cross section between different paths in the forest, which showed Ukrainian troops pretty deep into what we thought was the Russian line. And so if they're able to take advantage of these paths, they could actually reach the southern outskirts of Kremina. Now, they can't assemble a strike force large enough to assault Kremina from the south, because from the forest you can't really have these large tank columns with infantry fighting vehicles attacking a town. It would also be difficult logistically to supply something like that. And so really all we're going to see from the southern sector is these different probing operations. But this could potentially be dangerous to the Russians if they're not securing their southern flank, if the Ukrainians then go ahead and launch a head-on assault on Dibrova and then on Muzhmini, and then attack Kremina head-on from 2 different directions. And so I would again keep eyes on the situation in Kremina. This is really the only area where I have seen changes in the Luhansk front over the past week or so. And so just make sure to keep an eye out for what's going on over here. But thank you all for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.